Good morning. In his essay, The World as I See It, Albert Einstein writes, "My passionate sense of social justice and social responsibility has always contrasted oddly with my pronounced lack of need for direct contact with other human beings and human communities." These are the words of a true introvert. This quote got me thinking about other types of lone travelers, as Einstein called himself. Those who don't seek contact with other people. There's the rugged individualist, by which I mean having too much pride in not needing anyone else. That is how I was raised. There are those who are lonely or isolated, some who are living in their silent grief. There are people afraid of their neighbors and tired of negativity and hatred. These lone travelers are not introverts who come by their reclusive habits naturally. These are people in some sort of pain. And when we're in pain, we retreat. I can identify with these lone travelers beyond the way that I was raised. I spent years in retreat after a car crash where I drove when I was too drunk and crashed the car into a pole. My friend in the passenger seat woke 4 months later to a life-altering brain injury. I walked away from the crash. My wound was an invisible injury. I didn't know I was retreating at the time. I was only trying to survive with the moral weight of my actions. I thought I was doing the right thing by staying out of my community. My sole purpose was to make sure I didn't make a similar mistake. And it wasn't wrong to retreat in order to heal, to examine my life. But the weight didn't lift easily enough, and the shame only deepened. I wanted to reach out, but couldn't. And not reaching out reinforced the shame, which turned healing into hiding. If you didn't know me in 1994, you may have never known of my transgression. I never wore a scarlet letter. If I didn't mention it, no one who I've met in the past 30 years would know. Don't worry, I'm not going to advocate for everyone to walk around holding a sign with a list of their transgressions. Yeah, I don't even do that, so it's okay. What I will say is that I think right now we need to reckon with what keeps us in retreat, what keeps us from engaging with new, maybe uncomfortable situations, what keeps us from using our voice, what keeps us from our social responsibility. What kept me in retreat was shame. In his book, The New Civic Path, author and public innovator Rich Harwood writes, "Authentic hope spreads when we tell stories of people striving to improve their lives, especially when those stories contain their struggles and even failures." Stories? We all have stories. We, the people, care for the elderly, nurture the young. We make art and entertainment, goods and services. We fight for our rights, heal the sick, feed the hungry. We preserve history and nourish souls. We are the engine that makes our society function. We feel, we bleed, we care. More importantly, we are the moral engine of this country. And I believe we have been wounded. This moral injury keeps some of us in retreat. It's okay, for we are agents of hope. I introduce moral injury here because it's the invisible wound I experienced over 30 years ago, but didn't have a name for it until last summer. As someone who unintentionally harmed another person, I broke my own moral contract. And the complex feelings I had, the questions of my integrity, the bewilderment of what happened, are similar to how I feel when I listen to the national discourse of today. It's similar to the sentiment I hear from other people. First written about of soldiers during war, researchers are seeing that moral injury plays out in other fields, particularly those in healthcare or law enforcement, and in those who have unintentionally harmed another person. Here's a definition from the International Center for Moral Injury. Moral injury refers to the experience of sustained and enduring negative moral emotions, guilt, shame, contempt, and anger that results from the betrayal, violation, or suppression of deeply held or shared moral values. Moral injury involves a profound sense of broken trust in ourselves, our leaders, governments, and institutions to act in just and morally good ways. I'm not going to say that now more than ever we need to do X, Y, or Z, because to me that only amplifies my stress. I will say we need to create more space for connection, to promote a culture that cares and serves others, to demonstrate that we are for something, not just in opposition. This could be as large as a fun community event, or as small as between two people. Creating space, being intentional with how we interact with ourselves and our community, this is a new way of showing up and building trust. As agents of hope, our work is to cultivate trust. Rich Harwood writes, "Authentic hope grows when people come together across dividing lines and can see and hear one another. When we recognize people's reality and offer a sense of possibility that real change can occur. Authentic hope can be seen when we set out on a course for change and take small steps that demonstrate progress." Rich's work, The Civic Path, is about renewing civic faith. I was skeptical of his use of the word faith at first. It's a word I thought belonged right here to the church. But faith is not for the church alone. Faith is what we need to have in one another, a deeply held belief that we don't have to travel this world alone. Faith is trusting one another. Faith is what we need to have in ourselves, a deeply held belief that we are worthy. You are worthy. The antidote to our moral injury is to bring it out into the light, to speak our truth, to name it. Author and researcher Brené Brown writes, "Self-compassion is critically important, but because shame is a social concept, it happens between people. It also heals best between people. A social wound needs a social balm, and empathy is that balm. A social wound needs a social balm." 3 years ago, I attended what is called a Public Innovators Lab for an initiative where I live in Alamance County. For Alamance is a local grassroots effort that empowers community members to take action on issues that matter to them. Local leaders and civic-minded community members were tapped to attend, and I happened to be the president of the Burlington Writers Club at the time. In a small breakout group, I was surrounded by real leaders, directors, public officials, business owners. And they started to talk about why more people don't come to the table. What keeps people from voicing their concerns, from showing up? I raised my hand while in my head, shame was screaming at me that I wasn't worthy of being in the room. I admitted to the group that this was the first time I ever sat at the table. I said, I think most people are like me and they don't know they are wanted at the table or feel they are worthy of sitting at the table. Some are too tired or probably too afraid. In response, a woman said she was taught if there aren't enough chairs at the table, you bring your own. Agents of hope bring their own chairs. I don't know how much my comment changed anyone's thinking. What did change was me. It was a step towards showing up more fully, more engaged, putting my voice, my messy life experience in a new place, one that mattered to me. It was taking one small step. I'm still part of the initiative, and I'm not going to say to go join every cause or to never miss a gathering, because we do need rest. But pick one new community-focused thing, whether it's something completely new, or maybe it deepens an existing commitment. Possibly take one small step. Earlier this month, I went with my 95-year-old grandmother to Bermuda, a destination she had yet to visit. And one day in the late morning, we sat in a chair atop a hillside overlooking the bay for 2 hours. Then we walked downhill to sit in another chair on the patio by the beach to eat lunch. Then we moved to a lounge chair in the sand by the water. I said to her, "Grandma, we're actively resting." Sometimes the intentional space we need to create is for ourselves, is for rest, because personal space isn't retreating, it's restorative, and just as important as this space that you all have created right here. So I thought that Gandhi famously said we must be the change we wish to see in the world. And in looking for the quote, I found new references to a Brooklyn high school teacher. So we got a lot of Googling to do, right? So her name was Arlene Lawrence, and Arlene was an unhappy, overworked teacher who complained a lot, cried at her desk, and ridiculed her fellow teachers. She writes in what she calls the Love Project, "It came in on me loud and clear that I was the only one who could imprison or release me, that I was the only one I could do anything about changing. So I let go of my anger and negativism and made a decision to simply be totally loving, open, and vulnerable all the time." And then she advised, "One way to start a preventative program is to be the change you want to see happen." Be the change. Not think the change, not pray the change. Those are important too. But to be an agent of hope is to activate. We must embody the change. We must show up, whatever that means for us. You are the change you want to see happen. Einstein writes, "One knows from daily life that one exists for other people. First of all, for those upon whose smiles and well-being our own happiness is wholly dependent. And then for the many, unknown to us, to whose destinies we are bound by the ties of sympathy." Blessed be.